Chapter 18, Communicating with Global Publics, Building a Theoretical Framework for International Public Relations by Lieber and Higgins, discusses public relations from a global standpoint. It is set up as a paper, not a study, where the authors look at Australia, New Zealand, and the United States in order to discuss the challenges public relations practitioners face in today's global environment. In the introduction, the authors discuss the communication challenges of mainstream internet acceptance and the high expectations of public relations practitioners to service new worldwide audiences. This, however, has also increased the complexity of ethical issues faced by practitioners. They now find themselves as ethical guardians of their organizations. The introduction also points out trends emerging in public relations that require global strategies. Here, the authors present statistics revealing the significance of these trends. Combined gross product produced by multinational corporations is an impressive $2,535.6 billion. These organizations employ 31.6 million people worldwide. Nearly one-third of all U.S. corporate profits are generated internationally, and within seconds, a press release originating in Shanghai about corporate operations in New Delhi is read by shareholders in New York City. Corporate websites and blogs communicate instant messages to international stakeholders. All of this means that stakes have never been higher for strategic communicators because the sources of ethical mishaps multiply and the aftershocks resonate both worldwide and synchronously. The chapter also discusses what public relations practitioners face. Almost every communications decision, both in terms of advice provided internally to senior managers and those representing the organization's position to organizational constituents, potentially carries enormous global consequences. These consequences require ethical approaches capable of maintaining global public relations for every company around the world. This chapter presents a theoretical analysis of the strengths and weaknesses of existing theoretical approaches to global relationships and strategic communication ethics. It highlights two of the world's largest PR systems, Australia and New Zealand, and it also addresses the conducting cross-cultural research of global connected and diverse fields of public relations. The first thing it discusses is the global ethical standards. Significant culture-related differences have been found in how managers identify and address ethical issues. There is no one-size-fits-all model. Collectivist cultures shun codes that require individual practitioners to report each other for violations, while authoritarian countries perceive ethical codes as something to work around versus adhering to. The expectations, even in the U.S., which is the oldest PR system, continuously changes. One noteworthy exception is the attempt to develop a set of global ethical standards for those in media and in public relations. The Media Transparency Charter is an ethical code recognized by the Internal Public Relations Association, the Institute for Public Relations, the International Communications Consultancy Organization, and the Global Alliance for Public Relations and Communication Management. It attempts to compensate for the nuances of individual countries' public relations and journalistic systems. No document, however, can be a one-size-fits-all, so the vast spectrum of ethical norms across the globe vary. In one attempt to understand, Day, in 2005, grouped modern-day U.S. practitioners into two distinct roles. The first category of the practitioner is, while paid, the person simply advocates a principle that he or she already believes in. The second category is a public relations representative as only one hired to use particular points of view. Personal opinions are irrelevant. This is the typical standard worldwide. However, this is unsatisfactory. Neither of these positions provides a remedy for issues that arise when practitioners' values collide with organizations' best interests. One example of this is the Ford Motor Company and the Firestone-Bridgestone. This particular instance ended in finger-pointing battle and the public relations company dismissing themselves. This made all three companies look bad, but still provided no solutions. Australia and New Zealand have the two most active and advanced public relations systems in the Western Hemisphere. The study of New Zealand's business managers' attitudes towards ethical behavior found individuals who viewed themselves as more ethical than the average executive, but would simultaneously consider acting in unethical ways. An example of this is in Timberlands, the New Zealand government-owned logging company. They hired the British public relations company to represent them. This company was called Shandwick. The public relations company spied, infiltrated opposition factions, and made threats to sue anyone counter to the business interests. This leads to corporate accountability. These challenges multiply as growing demands for greater corporate accountability are factored into the equation. Technological developments, trends towards globalization, concerns for ethical and ecological issues, and changing roles of governments have brought in stakeholder scrutiny. Examples of this are exposure of labor practices and sportswear factors in Southeast Asia, Nike and others, PETA, fast food giant McDonald's, and the greater exposure of internal organizational practices that have caught these companies by surprise and raised new communication challenges. The article found that Millennial Poll of Corporate Social Responsibility found citizens across 6 continents are prepared to reward or punishment companies based on perceived social performance. This suggests that demands for a greater accountability and more detailed information about corporate impacts have entered into the mainstream. A public relations practitioner's job is that arguments that global information flows is under threat from activities of large business organizations mixed with reputation, image, and corporate identity is placed as more important than product price and quality for business survival, representing the organization's interests to the outside world. Two-way dialogue with stakeholders to maintain corporate reputation is what is needed. The public relations practitioner, as an unethical guardian, is gathering force to become a key occupational myth. The International Industry Codes. A minimum need for formal conduct guidance or enforcement with public relations' new global sphere is needed, according to the authors. This lacks formalized education, certification, and barrier of entry requirements for any individual country, let alone collective, meaning there is no unified anything. Current solution is industry-wide ethical codes, ideally meant to guide both intra- and intra-nation ethical decision-making and a smattering of ethic checklists and models. However, not all of them work. One such checklist is Baker's ethical decision checklist. He has 10 steps. Number 1, identify the relevant facts. Number 2, recognize and identify the relevant moral issue. 3, determine the moral actors. 4, investigate whether there's another way, a middle ground. 5, test for rights versus wrong. 6, test for rights versus wrong dilemma paradigms. 7, identify other role-specific values and duties. 8, apply resolution principles. 9, make the decision. And 10, justify that decision. The Public Relations Society of America first appeared in December of 1950. It's been continuously revised since. It emphasizes serving the public interest, avoiding misinterpretations to clients, employers, and others, and the continuing development of public relations practitioners. However, it contains no formal means of enforcement. The International Association of Business Communications, adopted in 1976, modified in 1985, but it possesses enforcement and sanction methods. However, they are also non-disciplinary. Australia and New Zealand are similar. Their Public Relations Institute of Australia and Public Relations Institute of New Zealand both lack formal enforcement procedures for ethical violations. The authors argue for a theoretic approach. Scholars propose loose qualitative operational guidelines. Approach is logical for 3 reasons: the relative newness of the field, its constant evolution, and because of this relative newness, most public relations practitioners are veterans of related mass communication disciplines, most notably journalism. They are worldwide in every sense of the word. Ethics of sister disciplines fail to address a dynamic public relations discipline environment domestically. Applying ethics across countries is a disaster. It is imperative, according to the authors, for public relations vocations and scholars to adopt a cross-cultural approach that more accurately assesses realities. The benefits of this cross-cultural approach it can uncover systematic relationships between behavioral and ethnic, cultural variables across public relations environments, and it allows for generalizations to be made about psychological principles governing the field's practitioners across the globe. These three concepts to describe the work are emics, which is a cultural specific concept applicable in one particular culture alone. Ethics looks for culture universals applicable to multiple cultures. And the one that the authors lean to, theoretics, the highest level of cross-cultural analysis, theoretical concepts that interpret and account for both emic variation and etic constants. The theoretic approach is holistic. With emic and etic data in hand, this approach allows researchers to form higher levels of data assumption and get the bigger picture perspective. Public relations needs to move this direction for professional progress to be made, according to the authors. The research and theory should attempt to explain both where these cultures meet and likewise where they diverge. They combine emic and etic approaches in order to provide new life for theory attached to communication problems. Future research should isolate variables that explain public relations from a theoretic context, one that transcends individual cultural nuances and microscopic analysis levels. The test predictive modeling emphasized client types and overall equations and infrastructure impact on word selection or announcements timing. In conclusion, reality is that conversations never end in the action. The current events in business and national security continue to spotlight strategic communication ethics, making the timing ripe for both research and quantify this topic. The benefits of quantifying both public relations and ethics are that it provides a tangible numerical data for the industry. A theoretic approach provides global scope sorely needed to power such efforts. Data can bolster code, standards, and general industry understanding. This shapes the field, its practitioners, educators, and clients toward a global present and future.